Hey everyone! Welcome back to Silas Infotech. If you're new here, don't forget to subscribe for more easy-to-follow tech tutorials. Today, we're diving deep into how to install Windows Server 2025 and deploy Active Directory on VMware Workstation. Whether you're a beginner or looking to expand your skills, this step-by-step guide will walk you through the entire process. Let's get started. First, let's take a quick look at what we're doing today. VMware Workstation is a powerful tool that allows you to run virtual machines on your computer. We'll be using this to install Windows Server 2025, which is designed to manage users, devices, and services in large networks. And, of course, we'll be setting up Active Directory to handle all the user management and security. Before we jump into the installation, here are a few things you'll need. VMware Workstation installed on your PC. If you haven't installed VMware Workstation yet, check out my previous video for a step-by-step guide on how to download VMware Workstation for free. The link is available in the description below. A Windows Server 2025 ISO file or bootable media. If you haven't downloaded the ISO file yet, let's do that now. First, open your browser and go to the official Microsoft download page. You'll find the link in the description below. Click on the Download ISO file and follow the instructions provided. After downloading the ISO file, let's set up VMware Workstation. Open VMware Workstation and click on File in the top menu, and then select New Virtual Machine from the drop-down menu, or you can click Create a New Virtual Machine from the home screen if it's your first time setting up a virtual machine. The wizard will prompt you to choose a setup type. Select the Custom, Advanced option to get more control over the virtual machine's configuration. Then, click Next to proceed. On the next screen, you'll be asked to select the hardware compatibility for your virtual machine. By default, VMware will suggest the latest hardware compatibility, which is usually fine for most use cases. If you're using newer VMware versions, leave the default selection as is, example Workstation 17.5. If you're working on an older version or need specific hardware compatibility, select a lower version. After selecting the appropriate hardware version, click Next. On this screen, choose the operating system you plan to install on the virtual machine. Select Microsoft Windows from the list of operating systems. Then choose the Windows Server version, example Windows Server 2025. If this version isn't listed, you can select a version that's similar or manually choose a Windows Server version from the drop-down menu. Click Next to continue. Now, name your virtual machine and enter a name for your virtual machine, example Lab SRV 2025. You can choose the location where the virtual machine's files will be stored. If you're unsure, leave it as the default or browse to a different directory. Afterward, click Next. Configure processor and memory. Here, you can choose the number of processors and cores for the virtual machine. Typically, allocate at least one processor with 2 cores. More is recommended for better performance. Click Next. Assign RAM to your virtual machine. It is recommended to allocate at least 4 GB for Windows Server 2025. Note: be mindful of your host machine's available memory. Don't allocate too much RAM to the virtual machine, or your host system may run slowly. After configuring memory, click Next. Configure network type. Network connection. Here, you can choose how the virtual machine will connect to the network. In this example, I'm using the bridged mode where the VM connects directly to the physical network as if it were a separate computer. After making your selection, click Next. Configure disk type and size. You'll now configure the virtual hard disk for the virtual machine. Create a new virtual disk. This is the option you'll want to select if you're setting up a new server or fresh installation. Click Next. Next, you'll allocate the size of the virtual hard disk. Recommended size, at least 60 GB for Windows Server 2025, but you can adjust it depending on your needs. Choose whether you want the disk to be split into multiple files or stored as a single file. Storing it as a single file is faster, but splitting it can make moving the VM easier. Click Next. At this point, you can review all your virtual machine settings. If everything looks good, click Finish. If you need to make any changes, you can use the back button to go through the steps again and adjust the settings as needed. Now, let's select the ISO file. Click on the CD/DVD option, choose Use ISO image file, and then select the ISO file from your download location. Once you've configured the settings, go ahead and power on the virtual machine. It will boot from the installation ISO. You'll need to press any key to start the installation process and follow the Windows Server 2025 installation wizard. Choose your language preferences and click Next. If you've installed previous versions of Windows Server before, you may notice some changes in Windows Server 2025. Now, accept the license agreement and click Next. Next, select the installation image. If you're a beginner, I recommend choosing Windows Server 2025 Standard, as this option allows you to work within a graphical environment. Then, click Next. Select the location where you want to install Windows Server. If you wish to create a new partition, click on Create Partition and follow the steps. For this video, I'm not creating partitions, so just ensure you have a clean disk selected and click Next to begin the installation. Once installation starts, your server will reboot a couple of times. Don't worry, just let it proceed. I'll fast forward the video to save time. Next, set up a password for the built-in administrator account and click Finish. Accept the license agreement. Great! Now that Windows Server 2025 is installed, it's time to install VMware Tools to enhance the performance of our virtual machine. VMware Tools improves overall functionality, including better graphics, mouse integration, and networking. To install VMware Tools, click on VM in the top menu of VMware Workstation and select Install VMware Tools. A new window will appear inside the virtual machine. Just follow the on-screen prompts to complete the installation. Once it's installed, you'll need to restart the VM for the changes to take effect. After rebooting, you'll notice a significant improvement in performance. Great! We've successfully installed Windows Server 2025 on our virtual machine. But now, before we move on to deploying Active Directory, let's take care of some initial configurations. Before diving into Active Directory, we need to configure a few key settings: the hostname, IP address, and time zone. These are important for the server to function properly in your network. Let's begin with the hostname. From the Server Manager dashboard, click on Configure Local Server. Here, click on Computer Name and then click on Change. Enter your desired hostname. It's a good practice to name the server something meaningful based on its role, like DC01 for the domain controller. After entering the new name, click OK, and then you will need to restart your server for the changes to take effect. Next, let's ensure your time zone is set correctly. Time synchronization is crucial for Active Directory, especially when dealing with Kerberos authentication and other time-sensitive operations. From the dashboard, click on Time Zone and click on Change Time Zone. Select the appropriate time zone for your location. Ensure that Set Time Automatically is enabled to keep your system's clock synchronized with an Internet time server. Finally, let's configure the IP address. In the dashboard, click on Ethernet 0, then your server network adapter will appear. Right-click on your network adapter and select Properties. Under the Networking tab, select Internet Protocol version 4, TCP/IPv4, and click Properties. Here, set a static IP address for your server. This is important because you want your domain controller to have a fixed IP to ensure consistent connectivity across your network. Enter an IP address that fits within your network's range. For instance, 192.168.199.5 with a subnet mask of 255.255.255.0. Add your router's IP as the default gateway, and optionally, configure DNS servers. For Active Directory to work, the DNS server should point to the server's own IP, like 192.168.1.5, as the domain controller will also act as the DNS server. But during the Active Directory deployment, you can use the IP 127.0.0.1 as DNS. Once you've finished the initial configuration, let's reboot Windows Server 2025. Now that we've configured the server settings, it's time to install Active Directory Domain Services, ADDS. This role is essential for enabling the domain controller functionality on Windows Server 2025, which will allow your network to manage resources and authenticate users across your domain. Let's get started with Active Directory. Start your Server Manager, which is your central hub for managing the server's roles and features. From the Server Manager dashboard, select Add Roles and Features. This will open the Add Roles and Features wizard, which guides us through adding new roles and features to the server. This wizard is designed to make the process as smooth as possible, and it will allow us to choose the Active Directory Domain Services role, which is crucial for configuring the domain controller. On the first page of the wizard, you'll need to choose the installation type. Select role-based or feature-based installation. This option allows us to install roles like Active Directory Domain Services on our server. Click Next to proceed. Now, you'll choose the server where the role will be installed. Since we're configuring the domain controller on this server, simply select your local server from the list. This will be the server that will become the domain controller for the stech.net domain. Here's where the real magic happens. In the Select Server Roles window, scroll down and check the box next to Active Directory Domain Services. This is the core role that will enable our server to become a domain controller. When you select this role, the wizard will automatically include all necessary features related to Active Directory, such as DNS, domain name system, services, and the necessary administrative tools. Windows Server automatically prompts us to add some essential features that are required for Active Directory to function properly. For example, the DNS server role, which is integral to Active Directory, will automatically be added. DNS helps the domain controller resolve domain names and provides essential network services. On the Select Features page, you'll see that DNS and other necessary services have been selected automatically. Review your choices, and if everything looks good, click Next to move to the next step. We're almost there. Now, click Install to start the installation process. At this point, Windows Server will begin installing the Active Directory Domain Services role. This might take a few minutes, so sit back and relax while the server prepares everything you need to promote this server to a domain controller. Once the installation completes, you'll see a notification in the Server Manager indicating that the server needs to be promoted to a domain controller. This is where the real action happens. After the role installation finishes, you'll notice a yellow notification in the Server Manager window. This notification will guide you to promote this server to a domain controller. Go ahead and click on the notification to start the Active Directory Domain Services configuration wizard. Since this is a fresh installation and you're setting up stech.net as the primary domain for your network, choose the option Add a New Forest. This means you're creating the first domain controller for the stech.net domain. The forest will contain all the domain controllers for your network. Type stech.net as the root domain name. Make sure to enter stech.net as your root domain name. This is the fully qualified domain name, FQDN, for your domain, and it will serve as the identifier for your network. Now, the wizard will ask you to select the forest functional level and domain functional level. For most environments, you'll want to leave these at their default values, which for Windows Server 2025 will be set to Windows Server 2025 for both the forest and domain. This will enable all the advanced features that come with the latest version of Active Directory, including improved security and replication options. The functional levels dictate which features are available to the forest and domain. Choosing the latest functional level will allow you to take full advantage of the new features introduced in Windows Server 2025. Next, you'll be asked to set a Directory Services Restore Mode, DSRM, password. This password is critical for disaster recovery scenarios. If you ever need to restore Active Directory, you'll use this password to log into DSRM mode. Make sure it's a secure password and store it in a safe location. Finally, let's review and install. Once you've reviewed all your settings, click Next, and the wizard will display a summary of your configuration. If everything looks correct, click Install. The server will now begin the process of promoting itself to a domain controller for the stech.net domain. This will take a few minutes, and your server will restart during this process. Once the installation is complete, your server will automatically reboot. When it comes back online, it will be a fully functional domain controller for the stech.net domain, ready to manage users, security policies, and all the network resources for your organization. Next, let's verify the status of our domain controller. Open Server Manager. Head over to Server Manager. This is where you'll find the tools to check the status of your domain controller. Access Active Directory users and computers. Click on Tools and select Active Directory users and computers. This tool lets us manage and monitor Active Directory, and it will show if our server is correctly configured as a domain controller. Verify Domain. You should see your domain listed on the left. In our case, the domain is stech.net. If it appears here, it means your server is officially a domain controller. This is the first step in confirming your server's status. But we're not done yet. We'll dive deeper to make sure everything is operating as it should in the next video. Now, let's add a new domain user and join a Windows computer to the domain. Adding a new domain user. Go ahead and open Active Directory users and computers. This is where you manage all user accounts in your domain. Create New User. Right-click your domain, choose New, and then click User. Fill in the user's first name, last name, and username. Let's create a new user called Stech1 with the username Stech1. Set a strong password. Check user cannot change password and password never expires to control user and device management for the IT administrator. Click Next, then click Finish to create the user. Repeat this process to add more users in Active Directory. Joining a Windows computer to the domain. Prepare DNS settings. Before joining a Windows computer to the domain, set up your computer's DNS server IP address to the domain controller's IP address. If you are using a DHCP server, set the Active Directory domain controller's IP address as the DNS server. Join computer to domain. On your computer, go to Settings System About, then click on Domain or Workgroup. Under Member of, select Domain, and type in the name of your domain, e.g., stech.net. Click OK. You'll be prompted to enter the domain administrator credentials. Enter the credentials and click OK. Once successful, you'll get a message saying Welcome to the domain. The computer is now part of the domain. Restart computer. Restart your Windows computer for the changes to take effect. Grant domain user administrative privileges on local computer. Open Computer Management. Press Win+X and click on Computer Management. In the left pane, click on Groups to view all the groups on the local computer. Add user to Administrators group. In the right pane, double-click on Administrators to open the Administrators group properties. Click on the Add button. This will open the Select Users, Computers, Service Accounts, or Groups dialog box. In the Enter the Object Names to Select box, type the domain user's name in the format domain_username, e.g., stech_domain user. Click Check Names to ensure the name is correct and recognized. The name should underline if valid. Click OK to close the dialog boxes. You should now see the domain user listed as a member of the administrators group. Verify domain user login on the computer. Log in with domain user account. At the login screen, click on Other User. Enter the username and password for the domain user we created, stech1. If the login is successful, you've confirmed that the computer is properly joined to the domain, and the domain user can now log in. Boom! You've just added a domain user, joined a Windows computer to your domain controller, and ensured DNS settings are in place. Everything is now ready to go. Once your computer is added to the domain, you can manage users and computers using Active Directory users and computers. You can reset passwords, unlock accounts, and move users between organizational units, OUs, with just a few clicks. Congratulations! You successfully installed Windows Server 2025, completed the initial configuration, and deployed Active Directory on VMware Workstation. You now have the building blocks of a robust IT infrastructure, ready for scaling and further configuration. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for more IT tutorials. If you have any questions, drop them in the comments below, and I'll get back to you.